Hello and welcome to Fire Prevention and You. I'm Mark Crosby of Quincy Access Television. Thank you for joining us. Today we will be looking at seasonal safety with the Quincy Fire Department's Lieutenant Christopher Murphy. So Chris, welcome back to Quincy Access Television and to this program specifically.
Thanks for having me back.
We talked initially before the cameras were rolling about grill safety, and certainly that's part of the seasonal safety aspect. We are recording this program at the end of May. That's a part of what we are going to talk about in this program, but a big part. So I guess let's start with that, and folks should be aware when they're using the grill how to use it correctly, where to place it, and obviously the hazards that they should always be aware of when using it.
Yeah, so grills are very popular and easy way to cook, especially in the summer. It's nice outside, people want to use them. But grills should be 10 feet away from a building, and grills are not allowed on any balcony. So basically, apartment buildings, you can't have a grill on the balcony, especially if there's an overhang above you. You know, you shouldn't have a grill, and that includes all grills, even electric. They do have electric ones now, which don't really produce the flame that a propane or charcoal grill would, but they're still not allowed on the balconies. And
because we should mention that fire can simply jump from the grill to the building and go up that structure pretty quickly.
Yes, and especially if it's not sprinkled. So the newer codes do have sprinklers on balconies, but you still can't have the grill out there. But the fire will travel a lot faster if it's an unsprinklered thing. We have had fires on balconies in the city before, so it's against the Mass General Law, so the fire codes.
And I guess with that said, some of the things that we will be talking about today will pertain to communities outside of Quincy.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess with that said, just be aware wherever you go of what those codes are. It helps.
Oh yeah, if you have a vacation home in New Hampshire, for example, then you want to know what their laws are up there. You know, which are probably very similar, because the hazards still pertain. You know, so they're 10 feet away from your house. So even if it's not an apartment building where there's a balcony, even on your own deck at your own house, you want to be 10 feet away from the house.
Some apartment complexes do have common areas that are on the ground that folks can grill and then take that to their balcony.
Yes. So yeah, that's a lot of especially the newer ones, they all kind of make those common areas for people to cook and hang out or whatever. So you'll find that some of them have multiple grills around the complex for the residents there. So there's really no need for anyone to have one in their own unit. You know.
Right.
And then if propane grills, they're generally pretty safe, but people have to keep in mind when they're lighting them, they keep the lid open, because if they leave the lid closed and the inside fills up with propane, and then they hit that button, that lid can blow off the top of it. So that's dangerous. And propane itself, you want to keep that stored outside. If you have an extra propane tank, you don't want to store it inside. When you turn the grill off, make sure you shut the propane tank off, not just the grill knobs. Because propane is it sinks as a gas, so if you have that too close to your house and the tank's leaking, that could sink. And if you have cracks in your basement or basement windows open or something, the propane can sink into your basement. So you want to keep keep your propane tanks 10 feet away from your house as well.
Good point. Talk about maybe folks are cleaning the grill, getting it ready for its first use of the season. What should folks be aware of?
You should check the propane lines, make sure that they're not cracked or leaking. I mean, really the only way to check them from leaking would be to turn the propane on and then spray it with soapy water, and you'll see air bubbles come out if there's a leak in the line. When you attach the propane tank, make sure it's on tight, and you should clean out all the old food and grease and build up underneath that can catch fire. Once it heats up, that can cause all of that to catch fire, and that can cause a problem too.
Absolutely. Grease catches extremely quickly and can take you by surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Before we leave grills, any further safety measures that folks should be aware of? Maybe simply, I guess, realizing that when you are cooking on a grill and the grill is on, if you get distracted, take something with you from the grill to make you aware that you were grilling a second ago?
Yep, yeah, it's just like cooking indoors. You know, you don't want to forget that you started cooking. So maybe try not to leave it. You really shouldn't leave it unattended. But if you do, taking something with you, maybe if you carry the spatula around with you, or one of those little grill tools or something. But that's a good point. Yeah, definitely. It's the same as cooking indoors. Try not to leave it unattended.
I suppose you have to deal with that said, when you leave it unattended, if you do, there's always the threat that a child or a pet might get burned.
Yeah, again, it's the same as cooking indoors, right? You need to be aware of who's there. If you have guests over, if they have their kids, you don't know, you might have taught yours to not go near those things, but maybe they're not. Maybe your guests' children aren't as educated on that, so you need to make sure that everybody is aware that it's on, and that somebody's standing by it.
Let's move from the grill to the fire pit.
People like to, have like the chimney type fire pits, and they'll say they use them to cook, but it's sort of like trying to find a loophole in the law. We don't allow any outside burning, so they're just not allowed in Quincy. And we get questions sometimes. People say they bought it at Home Depot. Home Depot is located in Quincy, but they don't just sell to people from Quincy, so that's why they carry that stuff. They sell to people from all over, and other towns do allow those.
So I guess that gets to the point. Okay, so if you are utilizing a fire pit and you are in a town or a city that allows it, let's just go over some of the safety precautions you should be aware of.
Yeah, well, definitely distance. You don't want to be too close. You want to make sure that the kids aren't getting too close and they're not playing games too close to the fire pit. You don't want to light it with any kind of gasoline or kind of a accelerant. You don't want to use anything to light it with that. And a lot of it sort of just kind of comes down to common sense. People just need to be careful and be responsible.
And talk about putting out a fire in a fire pit and what you have to be aware of, because you and I spoke about fire running underground. It can smolder.
The fire can smolder for a long time, so you really when you put it out, you do want to soak it. So even when it's lit, you should have a hose kind of standing by, or at least a bucket of water. If you're like a 5-gallon pail or something, if you're at a place that doesn't have hose access, like a campground, if you can fill a bucket with water, then leave it nearby. And you do want to soak it pretty good to put it out and make sure that it's completely out before you go inside, because the fires can smolder for a while.
I know in this state, Massachusetts, fireworks are illegal. It doesn't stop people from using them, or again, maybe a resident of Quincy travels to New Hampshire where they are legal. Mm-hmm. What should folks be aware of regarding fireworks?
There's a lot. They're dangerous. They're fun, but they're dangerous. They should really just leave them to the professionals, because too many accidents can happen. You hear stories. People light them, and if they may be defective, and then they explode too soon, still in your hand, still way too close by. If you don't set them up right, they can shoot in the wrong direction into the crowds. So there's really a lot of safety factors with them. And again, but a lot of it does come down to common sense and someone being responsible for what they're doing. If you don't know what you're doing with them, then you shouldn't be using them at all, even if you're in a place where it's legal.
The National Fire Protection Agency put out some literature, and I'm going to hold that up because a lot of what we talk about comes from their recommendations as well. But there's a graphic at the bottom which shows a sparkler. Talk about that and the heat that could generate.
Yeah. So the sparklers, they seem to be sort of a popular firework that people let kids play with. It's just a stick that lights and shoots off sparks off the end of it, but they can get as hot as 1,200 degrees. So it's obviously very dangerous, and you're holding that right in your hand, and little kids are running around with them, and they could burn their friend. It might not be you that gets hurt; it may be their friend that gets hurt. So that's just things people need to keep in mind. They do generate a lot of heat.
alternatives, glow sticks. People see a lot of those out and about during the summer months, during the season. Much better alternative, certainly family friendly.
Yeah, they don't produce any heat or anything, and they're bright. Kids do like those to run around with. So those are good. I know people use them too. If you're in a little bit of a crowd and you give your kid certain color, then you can look for them. People use them to identify the kids too.
Identify my child by the color of the glow stick.
Yeah, I've seen people do that too. So
I never thought about that, but that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Wildfires. I know you have been talking, you were talking to me prior to sitting down about the Blue Hills and fires that seem to be happening almost every weekend.
This year so far, yeah, we've had trucks up the Blue Hills a lot. That's kind of a bigger area, and that a lot of those fires they could start from, they could be intentional. They could be someone just smoking on a hike, and then they throw a cigarette down, and that just like you say smolders in the brush for a little while, and then just gets going to a bigger fire. The same thing can happen though, just in your backyard, if you smoke or whatever, and you throw a cigarette in the plant or on the deck, that can smolder, and later on that night can end up catching the plant on fire, the house on fire, and then causing a bigger problem. One of the big things we see just in the city is everyone puts down fresh mulch, and then even like outside the stores, like the grocery store or traffic islands, people in their car, they just throw the cigarette butts everywhere, and then it causes the mulch to smolder, and then that catches on fire. So it doesn't create a huge fire necessarily, but it's kind of like a nuisance thing, and that creates a lot of smoke, and we get a lot of calls for that this time of year too. So again, that's kind of comes down to people being responsible with their cigarettes when they're done with them, and putting them out safely.
I just spent the weekend raking leaves away from some of my shrubs. Obviously, leaving something like that where they're dry or when they get dry certainly is could be a cause of a fire, especially if someone was driving by and just flicked a cigarette out.
Yep, definitely is. People should clean up that dry brush around their house, underneath the deck, those kinds of places. And then also, people that may be responsible who do smoke or whatever at their own home, if they have a party and they have guests, then they need to make sure the guests are also disposing of those things properly so that they don't have any accidents.
What about, let's talk about how water and electricity don't mix. And I guess I'm thinking of outdoor pools and spas of some kind. What folks need to be aware of when they're dealing with electricity and water.
People just need to be careful of if you're running electrical cords around the yard for even if it's for yard tools, that kind of stuff, or if you're having a party and you need to run electrical for stereos or whatever else you put around. Just be careful the distance, how close you are to the water with those things. The outlets should be, they call GFCI outlets, and installed by licensed electrician. So those outlets, they trip quickly if the cord gets wet or whatever. So anything that's done in the yard should be done by a licensed electrician. If you can use a power strip to plug in multiple things, you should just use one and make sure it's not overloaded with too many devices.
And talk about extension cords are, I would say they're rated. They certainly are rated. There are some that are thicker than others. There are some that are simply for indoor use and some for outdoor use. So make sure you use the correct one in the correct location.
Definitely. And they also have another thing to look for would be like a UL listing, which is like it's like a that's the right word for it, but like the company that I want to say
a rating.
They rate them, yeah. So they test and rate cords and appliances and all that. So you want one that's UL rated and for outdoor use.
And if folks use the season to get away to another destination, what should folks be aware of if they're staying in a place, and most likely they are, that they're not familiar with?
If you rent a house, make sure that you're familiar with the layout. check it out when you first get there. Just, what's the layout, 'cause it's going to be different than your own home. You wake up in a different bed. You don't want to be confused about how to get out of that particular room. Some places people rent, they may have bedrooms in the basement which maybe don't have the right escape routes, so maybe you don't want to use that bedroom if you don't have to. If you're staying in a hotel, I would pay attention to the back of the door. Always says the escape plan for every single room. And the first few times you leave that room, you could even just kind of practice it as you walk to the stairway. Count the number of doors to the exit. That way, if it's dark in the hallway or if there's smoke in the hallway, and even if you had to crawl through, you could, as you crawl, feel each doorway. You went by 4 or 5 doors, whatever it is, from your room to the exit, and you could do it with your eyes closed. So it's good to practice it, and it's good to make sure you pay attention to that escape plan.
And the escape plan would include a meeting spot for folks to gather so that everybody knows that that everyone else is out.
Yep. Oh yeah. If you're with your family, make sure, and that way when the firefighters come, you can have everybody accounted for, and if not, you can let them know who's unaccounted for and which room they may have been in. Yeah, it's the same. Everything applies the same that would apply to your own home. You just want to make sure you do it when you go away, because people, no one's focused on that really. You go on vacation, you're kind of focused on just going and having fun. But
right.
If you make it a habit of something that you do, then you'll do it every time you go somewhere, and that'll be just kind of cover your bases and makes you just a little bit safer just in case something happens.
Now I'm thinking not so much with a hotel or a motel, but if someone is staying in, let's say, a private home, it's probably not a bad idea to just test the smoke alarms, right?
No, it's a great idea. Yeah, make sure they work, because you don't really know what you're getting when you go somewhere. They may not have batteries that work in those. They may not. Some places may be missing them. You want to make sure they're there. If they're not there, then you call the landlord or whoever you rent from and tell them that you'd like them in there. Because it definitely helps save lives having smoke alarms in the house.
And with that said, let's just tell the folks when they should check and change batteries in their own home.
So you should test the smoke alarms once a month, and practice your meeting spot and how to get out, especially if you have kids. Do that once a month would be great if people would do that. But I know it's hard for people to do it, and not a lot of people think about it. But definitely check the alarms once a month and replace the batteries 1 to 2 times a year. They used to say do it when the clocks get changed back, but now they're talking about not changing the clocks anymore. So we just try to tell people to do it to kind of significant points in the year, like things that they'll remember, like right after the New Year, maybe right after 4th of July, 2 kind of midpoints. Something that's significant to you that's about 6 months apart. It could be your birthday and your wife's birthday or something. If they're about 6 months apart, or whatever two time frames that people can come up with, that'd be 6 months. Just sort of that will remind them to do that.
I know that this isn't often the case, but it did happen to a friend of mine out on the road. A tire actually came off of a car in front of them and went into their windshield and started a fire.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
So she pulled over and everybody was able to get out. But I guess it brings to mind, if that ever does happen, you want to get out of that car as soon as possible. You don't want to try to put out a fire, or maybe it's an electrical issue within the car and started a fire. You don't want to play around with that. You want to pull over and get out.
Absolutely, just like a house fire. If you're ever in a situation where there's going to be a fire, you want to be as far away as possible. You don't want to be, you don't want to be in the middle of it. You don't want to. If it's your house, you don't want to go back in. If it's your car, you get out. But then you don't need to. You'll lose a few things, but if you get out and you've got your cell phone, don't try to go back and get it. Just leave it. You can replace it. Anytime you're in any situation where there's potential for danger of smoke inhalation or a fire, you should definitely get out.
And just, if you could, just talk about how quickly smoke can make someone disoriented.
It can happen very quickly, because it's going to affect your ability to breathe, and then panic will set in. And it doesn't take much. A few good breaths of smoke, and people can get disoriented. And like I said, then you start panicking, and then you're not thinking straight, and you may go left when you need to go right, and you're just not gonna make good decisions once you start panicking.
As we kind of close this program, anything that I haven't highlighted that you'd like to highlight in regard to fire safety during this season?
The biggest thing I think that, like I mentioned, is just trying to make sure that you're using common sense and that you're being responsible with what you're doing. If you are somewhere else and you're going to use fireworks, make sure you really know what you're doing. Read the instructions on them. And I'm also not sure if they come with instructions, but I assume they do. Make sure that you're safe about it. Be careful with the kids. The kids, they just want to have fun, and if they see you doing something, you're using the fireworks, they're going to think it's okay, and then they may try and use them. So the biggest thing is just for people to be responsible.
And we talked about fire pits. We didn't talk about bonfires, but clearly that's generally a large fire. Those also aren't allowed in the state.
No, they're not. There are events where they are allowed, and you need special permitting for it. They do have one every year in Quincy down in Howe's Neck around the 4th of July, but it's permitted, and we have guys on duty down there with a truck too. So that's for a special event. You can get permits, but.
And I know we talked about the Blue Hills. I don't know if how the fire department was tipped off to that. I mean, possibly someone might have called on a cell phone. If someone does see smoke and they think maybe it could be a fire or the start of a fire, what should they do?
Always call 911. Yep.
Okay.
And make sure you know where you are, so we can get a good location on it. The cell phone, if you're home and you call from a home phone, usually the 911 system will identify where you are. Cell phones, it can be a little trickier for the system to know exactly where you are. So being aware of your surroundings is good. Even if you're driving, make sure you know what street you're on. Some people, they really don't. They call it in, and they don't know where they are though, and it's helpful to call, but not if we can't get there. So paying attention when you're driving, especially if you're along the highway, know what exit you're near. But yeah, call it in anytime. We'll respond to of course, we have to respond, but we're happy to respond to any 911 call to check and make sure that everybody's okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. You don't want to lose even one life to something that could have been prevented.
No.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us. I think we've covered this well. I don't think we've left any stone unturned. A lot of what you said, and you had mentioned this prior to starting, was going to be common sense. But I think sometimes we forget our common sense.
Yep.
I mean, we don't. We get sometimes involved in the moment, and the little things that are so important tend to slip by.
Yep, and accidents happen. So even you can use as much common sense as you want to, but then accidents can happen as well. So, things just happen. So that's why we're here.
Very good, Lieutenant. Thank you for joining me for this particular program, and we welcome you back to talk more about fire safety in the future.
Okay, I look forward to it.
Great, me too.
Thanks, Mark.
And thank you at home for watching. This has been a program of Quincy Access Television. I just would like to add that we hope that whatever community you live in, that you stay safe during this season of the year, and all year, of course, and also support your local access television station for programming just like this.